This is Beyond the Verdict. I'm John Horford with Marion Cook and Christina Capron. Horford.
Hey.
You have to tell me what you want me to call you. I'm going to keep bringing this up and people are going to be like, you just need to shut up. And we just haven't figured it out off air.
I think you just do all the names at once.
I know, but I just don't know what her name is.
Well,
you've said it every time. I don't know why you're confused.
I know, but I just feel like more people know you by Christina Capron.
That's fine. Then call me that.
All right, cool.
All right, we're settled. We got it now.
We got
All
it.
right,
We're good.
we got it. On to more important things. January 6th.
Peaceful day of protest.
It was a peaceful protest. The January 6th insurrection was a violent culmination of months of disinformation and conspiracy theories claiming that the 2020 U.S. presidential election was stolen from Donald Trump. Some of the key contributing factors were obviously the big lie that I just referenced, Trump and his allies promoting false claims of widespread voter fraud, despite over 60 failed legal challenges and bipartisan certifications in numerous states. Stop the Steal movement was a coalition of pro-Trump activists, influencers, and extremist groups that organized rallies and spread conspiracies online. And then, obviously, Trump's rhetoric, which, some people deny, but on January 6, 2021, during the rally near the White House, Trump told supporters to fight like hell and to march to the Capitol. And that if they didn't fight, that, their country was going to be taken from them. And a lot of people obviously took that as a call to action.
Yeah.
Right? So it's interesting, and we were talking about it before we started recording, just how people are split, and it's a political divide a lot of times, but not always, regarding what happened, like what actually happened, and whether it was right or wrong, or whether they were justified in their actions.
Well, we've talked about this before. Peaceful protest is a way to show something that isn't right, is a way to protest basically something that's happening in your area, in your country, in your whatever, insert that here. But the difficulty then becomes when it becomes violent. And I remember in our last episode, I think, John, it was you who maybe said something that sometimes you have to take next steps. But I think, unfortunately, sometimes people take those steps way too far. And they take them to extremist measures where they are damaging property, they're hurting other people. But what was it in the name of? Do you know what I mean?
I mean, in this case, it was in the name of protecting America and keeping America from becoming whatever it is that Donald Trump supporters believe that it was going to become.
But the people that got hurt, the people that were trying to protect the Capitol, that were there legitimately, that actually got hurt by this, how does that further the cause of protecting America by hurting people?
In their minds, in their minds, these people got in the way of them holding these elected representatives accountable for helping to steal an election from Donald Trump. I mean, even Donald Trump's vice president, they're like, and get him too. Like, let's find and hang Mike Pence. Looking for individual people. A couple of them got killed, like during the riots. Like, it was violent. It was destructive. It's hard to justify. I mean, I remember watching it. We watched it together. And how do you justify what happened? But then how do you allow a president who very clearly incited this riot, how do you allow that person to not be held accountable? He was impeached twice, but impeachment doesn't mean anything if they're then not found guilty by, I believe the Senate has to find them guilty. Right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean anything. Like, what did it mean? What did it stop you from doing? He was impeached twice. So what? He was never found guilty of any of the charges that he was originally impeached for. So is that truly accountability?
Well, I don't think necessarily it is, but keep in mind, historically, there have been other presidents who've been impeached, and what did that do other than say they were impeached?
Yeah, maybe they should have been found guilty too, but it was for far less serious charges. I can't even remember what the first president was impeached for. It was Andrew Johnson was the first president to be impeached.
Oh, I'm not minimizing what happened. I'm just saying, when people think of the word impeachment, they think that's going to carry some sort of penalty along with it or some sort of monumental consequence.
Correct.
And it generally doesn't, other than the word you're impeached.
But it can.
It can if they do it differently.
But they never have.
Right. That's the point.
Yeah.
So where does that come down to? Who decides that?
The Senate decides that.
Well, would it have
Right.
stopped?
But what I'm trying to get you to say is the Senate decides that, but is it the majority of this party or the majority of that party? It depends on who the majority party is, right? Because they have to vote.
Yeah.
And majority rules.
I don't know if it's majority. I don't know if they need more than a clean majority, or if they need like at
Isn't
least
it a
60.
two-thirds?
Is it
Two-thirds
2/3?
vote?
Do they need 2/3? It might be 2/3. I'm not sure.
That's what sticks in my mind. I could be wrong, so don't yell
we
at me
should
if
just
that's the
look it
case.
up.
But 2/3 sounds.
I love yelling at you, Myrene.
I know you do. You do it all the
I'm
time.
just a screamer.
You say I'm sassy and all kinds of
know,
stuff.
I know, out of control, really.
But I think that's the thing. I think sometimes people get so ingratiated in the idea of their political party that they're missing sight of the right and the wrong of it. Mm-hmm. The party could be right for these reasons. That same party could be wrong for other reasons on a different topic. And I really wish people would stop looking at political affiliation as it's the only answer and try to look at what's the right thing to do for the right reason. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't matter if it's a red idea or a blue idea. It should be what's the right idea. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't seem to really take precedence a lot.
Yeah, you need 2/3.
Oh, so I was...
Myrene, you're right all the time.
I just want to hear it once. Once per episode, that's all.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you're right all the time. But again, yeah, like I had mentioned, I didn't think it was like just a basic majority. It's not like you need, if you get 51, you need 67.
But I think the general public thinks the word impeachment means they're removed.
They do think that. I actually just got in an argument with my sister about that this weekend. Sorry,
if
Anna.
you were found guilty in the Senate, if he was found guilty in the Senate, would he have been able to run again?
I don't believe so.
That's all we needed. Sorry. Anyways.
Yeah,
continue.
But it's hard to get that. Even if you have a majority, it's getting 67 is different
really
than,
hard.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's very, very difficult. But in this case, with this specific instance, like the last president who was impeached, Bill Clinton, for lying about the Monica Lewinsky scandal, like, in all honesty, who cares? Like, it was a consensual relationship. Obviously, there's a massive power dynamic there, power dynamic issue. I'm not saying what he did was right, but I'm just saying what he did wasn't an attempt to overthrow a democracy. Mm-hmm. Like, they were just horribly, horribly prepared. They did a terrible job. I mean, he even hesitated in getting like the National Guard to come in and to help like settle the situation. Like, that's how negligent this individual who was president and is president again was in this situation.
I think it's also dangerous too, because you're talking about loyalty to a party, but this felt like loyalty to him. Like, mm-hmm. Mike Pence wouldn't, you know what I mean? He was like, no, I will not do this. Like, this is not.
But I think some extremists for either party look at loyalty to the person as loyalty to the party. In a lot of circumstances, they do.
But forget about loyalty to the party or loyalty to the person. Loyalty to the United States of America. As an American, as somebody who loves and wants this country to continue on. Like, people think America is just going to go on forever. Mm-hmm. Historically, very, very, very few, whatever you want to call it, countries, powers, last forever. Like, most of them end, most of them have some sort of upheaval that changes things. Like, America's not immune to that by any means. Mm-hmm. And they attempted to make that happen on January 6th. They just did a horrible, terrible job of it. Like, had they been a little bit more competent and had planned a little bit better, they got in. Mm-hmm. Who knows what they could have done? Mm-hmm. Like,
they were very close.
Yeah,
Yeah, but did they have a plan if they got in? I mean, that's the question. So they want to rally. They want to.
I don't think so.
Right. That's my point, though. They want to rally. They want to protest. They want to do all the things. But nobody thought beyond that, like, oh, crap. Now what do we do if we actually get into the place?
I think some people did, because some people had zip ties, and I think like the Proud Boys, Oath, like those kind of groups, I think they were very much like planning.
Oath Keepers,
Maybe
Proud
not
Boys,
like the
and the
general
Three Percenters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were looking that up, does it say what the standard or the burden of proof is for the Senate to make that determination? Because this goes back to us talking about juries and having to find something beyond a reasonable doubt. Even when they find somebody not guilty, they say, well, we think something probably happened. We think they probably did it. But that standard is an unreasonably high standard to achieve, or we don't understand what that standard is. You would hope senators in the Senate would understand what it is their burden is. But I'm just curious if it actually says what the standard or burden of proof is for that decision.
Just Trump faced a single impeachment charge, incitement of insurrection for his role in urging a mob to attack the Capitol complex on January 6th. The trial ended in just 5 days, with both sides choosing not to use the full time allotted by the agreed upon trial rules. The trial briefly appeared, headed towards introducing witnesses on Saturday before an agreement between the defense and the House managers avoided prolonging the process. Trump was impeached by the Democratic-led House last month, a week after the insurrection, and just days before he left the White House. Final vote tally.
Does it give you the final tally?
Yeah, it gives the final tally.
What was it?
57 guilty votes, 43 not guilty votes.
Wow. So this would be just like a jury for me. I'd want to go talk to all of them and say, okay, why did you, 57, say yes, and why did you, 43, say no? Is it the burden of proof? Is it something else? Is it the word choice? Because there's a lot of times when I have a case, it's clear that the crime was committed. But when you look at the elements of the crime to have to prove it, it gets really convoluted. So is that the case for impeachment articles? Should it be something that is more plain language, something easier to understand? I don't know, but it's an idea.
I mean, wasn't one of them like derelict of duty? Is that a thing, a term?
Dereliction of duty?
Dereliction of duty. Yeah. I mean, waited hours to call for help.
I mean, this was based on the impeachment charge from the House. The charge from the House was incitement of an insurrection. So basically what these members, and obviously they're all Republican members, and there were 7 Republicans and 2 independent members that voted along with the Democrats. Clearly they weren't willing to say that Trump incited an insurrection when he very clearly incited an insurrection. Like,
I'm not saying he didn't.
I'm saying they are saying he didn't by this vote.
Right, but my point is what are the elements they had to meet for that? Did his words actually do that? You know what I'm saying? Like, if I have to prove a bank robbery, I have to prove you went into the bank, you had a weapon, and you intended to permanently deprive that bank of the money, the gold, whatever it is you're going to steal. I have to prove certain elements of a crime. For murder, I have to prove premeditation and deliberation, and there was a death. There's different kinds of things you have to prove for every one. My concern is the level or definition of inciting a riot, if that's what the word was. What is the definition of that? Maybe those 43 didn't feel it completely met that burden. They would do like most juries do, which is, yeah, I think he did something happened, but is it something that they can prove beyond whatever the burden of proof is? I'm not agreeing that it shouldn't have been. I'm just pointing out that I think sometimes the way the law is written makes it very difficult for juries, makes it very difficult, in this case, for the Senate to come down with a unanimous verdict one way or the other.
I wish that was the reason that they had done it, because they were thinking about it that way. The reason why they voted the way that they did was blind loyalty to Trump and fear of retaliation from Trump supporters in their districts when it came to their own re-elections. Like, full stop. Trump very clearly was promoting these false claims of widespread voter fraud that were proving to be lies time and time again. Like, there is no proof that anything was stolen at all. They had the whole Stop This Steal movement. There was the big lie. And then Trump's telling people that they need to go fight like hell and that if they're not willing to fight, that the America that they love is going to be gone because Joe Biden's been elected president.
But what does the words fight like hell mean? It means something different to different people. You're going to have your extremists who are going to take it one way. You're going to have your peaceful protesters who take it a different way. That's what I mean about the definition piece. I'm not saying they shouldn't have by any stretch. I'm not saying there might have been some who were afraid of retaliation by Trump. What I'm saying is you have to determine, does the words fight like hell fit the definitions of that? Yes or no?
I believe that it does. And then I would also say what moved them to this point was lying and saying that this election was stolen without any proof. And then there's also the call that he had made to, what was it, the Secretary of State of Georgia, literally bribing him and then threatening him. No,
we just need 11,000 more votes.
I mean, it just, I think, and I know people make, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Please. No, I was going to say, I know people make these comparisons all the time, but if Barack Obama had done like even a fraction of a percent of what Trump did, he would have got absolutely crucified. That guy had to be like nearly perfect. Like if he was caught calling people and bribing them and, claiming that elections were stolen, and if he had, numerous children from 3 wives, and if he was telling people to fight like hell, and if he had done what Trump did and incited this riot. I mean, let's talk about the people that were hurt. 140 officers injured, concussions, chemical burns, fractured ribs, PTSD, 4 suicides afterwards.
Damn, 4 suicides by victims?
No, Capitol Police officers. 4 suicides.
Victims, right?
They were the victims.
Yeah. 4 suicides by Capitol Police officers, right? Linked to the trauma of the event. There's a police officer that died of a stroke the day of the riot because he was attacked with a chemical spray. There's a few of the insurrectionists that were killed. But yeah, 140 officers injured. And obviously, like, staff and lawmakers had to barricade themselves for hours. There were chants of hang Mike Pence, and they were trying to kill him. And after this, so this is another reason why, in my mind, it's just Trump knew what he was doing. He encouraged it, and he had no issue with what was done, despite police officers being hurt and innocent people dying, is because over 1,400 people were charged, right? Over 900 convictions ranging from trespassing to seditious conspiracy, other charges, assaulting police, obstructing an official proceeding, destruction of government property.
Was anyone charged with murder or the deaths of the people that died?
I
can't remember.
I don't think so. Because I don't know if the person who was sprayed, I don't know that they know who sprayed the officer who died, and then the suicides afterwards. Like, the trauma came from the group and the act itself. So I don't believe that anyone was charged for murder. But the reason why any of those thoughts just get thrown out the window for me related to, Trump not knowing what he was doing is the fact that he pardoned everyone that was involved in the potential overthrow of the United States government. Mm-hmm. He pardoned them all, or tried to. Some of them denied the pardons.
Well, here's a good question. Do you think the president should have the right to pardon people? And I don't mean just Trump. I mean any president. Should any president have the right to pardon people once they've been duly convicted by a jury of their peers and all the things that you have to go through to get those convictions?
It's an interesting power.
It is weird, honestly, to me.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say no. I don't think anybody should have that right. That's what appellate courts are for.
Right.
Yeah.
The appellate courts can go through and they can look and see if things were done the right way, if the elements were meant. But if a jury decided, and that's our system, then I think who is the president, any president, to upset that jury verdict? Mm-hmm. If the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court have decided those are just verdicts, then I think they need to stand. regardless of who they are or what they did. It needs to stand.
We should look into the history of presidential pardons, because there has to be some like historical precedent for why presidents receive those pardons. But I wanted to talk real quick about the specifics of these pardons. So on January 20th, 2025, the first day of his second term, President Trump issued a sweeping proclamation granting pardons and commutations for the January 6th related convictions. He commuted sentences for 14 of the most prominent individuals, primarily members of like the Oath Keepers. I don't even want to say their names, Oath Keepers and Proud Boys. And then full unconditional pardons for all other January 6th defendants, over 1,200 pardoned, leaving not a single person still serving or with pending charges. All individuals incarcerated for January 6th were released immediately, and the DOJ was directed to dismiss with prejudice all pending indictments related to January 6th.
Do you know what dismiss with prejudice means?
I don't.
So when you have a dismissal, dismissing with prejudice means you can't refile it. You can't redo it. Dismissing without prejudice means you can. So for example, if I have a case and my witnesses don't show, but there's a good reason, maybe they were in a car accident, and I don't mean that it's good, but I mean there's a legitimate reason why somebody didn't show up. I can voluntarily dismiss that case without prejudice, meaning I can refile it at a later date when they're ready or they're out of the hospital or whatever it may be. If a case is dismissed with prejudice, that means you can never refile it, ever.
So that's what they got.
Yeah.
So that's a statement. He's saying, not only do all these people deserve to be free, I don't think what they did was wrong, and I don't think you should ever be able to hold them accountable for what they did.
And I think that's wrong.
It's crazy.
It's absolutely ludicrous. I don't think anybody should have the power to pardon. And how do you think that makes the victims of January 6th, those police officers and those other innocent people who were hurt, how do you think it makes them feel when they know that happened? Like,
horrible.
What? They don't matter. They're insignificant.
Exactly. Yeah. And some of the people that refuse the pardon, which is something else that we should talk about, and you might know more about it than I do, but several people refused the pardon. I'll say their names just because it's interesting. Jason Riddle, he was federally charged and convicted for entering Senate parliamentarian's office and stealing items. Trump's blatant pardon included him by default, but he rejected it, stating it would dishonor Capitol Police and the rule of law. Pamela Hemphill, an Oath Keepers affiliate, sentenced to 60 days in prison. She publicly refused the pardon, saying accepting it would insult Capitol Police officers in our nation.
So what do you think about them not accepting the pardon? Do you think that was the right thing for them to do?
Yeah, I think that's honorable.
Yeah, yep. And then there's one other person who is still kind of in trouble. I guess he was pardoned for his Capitol riot-related convictions, but not for later charges involving a murder for hire conspiracy against FBI agents.
So I have a question. So generally in a case of criminal nature, the victim, there's something in Michigan called the Crime Victims' Rights Act, where they have an opportunity to speak at sentencing or to speak if a case is going to be set aside. They have that opportunity to still do that, even with some laws that allow expungement. Do you think in cases of presidential pardon, the victims get a say, get a victim impact statement, are allowed to say, no, you shouldn't do that, and here's why?
No. I mean, not only do they not get that, I don't even want to bring this up because I feel like it's going to take away too much from the January 6th stuff, but I'm going to bring it up anyway because my mouth is already running. Presidents can pardon people for things that they haven't even done, or things that they haven't been convicted of, or things
Joe Biden.
Yeah, I know. And it's just like, that's so weird, Joe.
And I'm not pointing that out because
I know.
he's a Democrat or one's a Republican. That's not my position.
Too, yeah.
I brought it up.
But seriously, you're going to pardon your family and they
for anything that they could have potentially done
crimes.
from this date to this date. I think there was like a spread of dates.
Right, but they haven't been charged yet. So
exactly.
Any future prosecutions.
But I don't know that there was anything in the future though. I didn't think there was a future date.
No. I don't mean future, but if you did something between January and June of 2024, for example, but you're not charged yet because the case isn't ready to go yet, there's still more investigation going on, you're waiting on labs to come back or something else, that's what I mean by future prosecution. It's from the same time period, but it is something that you start in the future, not for a future date. But that's my point on this whole pardon thing. It's ridiculous. I mean, Biden went back and pardoned his son for what he was convicted of, and that upset that verdict, and that should have stayed in place too.
Yeah. So I just wanted to get the dates of the pardon down, just so people are aware, or they could just look it up themselves. So he gave pardons to several members of his family, and the Biden pardons applied to any nonviolent offenses they may have committed between January 1st, 2014, and the date of the pardon. Yep. And then his son Hunter got a separate type of pardon. And he was pardoned for his federal tax and gun convictions.
If I had a legislative pen, nobody would be able to pardon. I would change that rule.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't blame him just because of how vindictive President Trump is and just how reckless he is with his power sometimes, and who knows what somebody like that would try to do. And I mean, I don't necessarily, we don't have to get into like more of his policies and decisions. I think the January 6th thing is enough, like full stop. Like there are lots of things that the Trump administration has done that I don't agree with, and that I think historically are going to be looked back on with disgust. But the January 6th thing, like party aside, individuals aside, like if you care about America, if you care about democracy, and you try to justify and support that, like it's the most un-American thing ever.
I think it's so scary too, because so many of them thought they were fighting for democracy, like genuinely believe that in their bones. But it's like, you didn't take the time to maybe look into the 60 cases or how many cases were there any cases at that point, actually?
But it's easy but that's the thing about, and we talk about the media all the time and the power that the media has. It's easy to manipulate the way these people think sometimes, because even right now, there are people on the far left who are saying it was impossible for Donald Trump to win his election, and, it was stolen, and we need to do something about it. But they're not rioting, they're not attacking the Capitol, they're not killing the police officers over it, but they're still talking about it. And when I hear those conversations, I try to encourage them to the best of my abilities to like, please stop talking like that. It does no good.
But I think
and it's not true.
That does come from both sides.
It does, but they took it so far.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with you on January 6th, but what I'm saying is you can't just pick and choose. One side can't go that far, the other side can't. You mentioned a minute ago that you understood why Biden pardoned what he did. But I think if we're going to take away pardons, everybody loses that right, not one side or the other.
I agree. No pardons for anyone in that case, but I understand why he pardoned the people that he pardoned. And outside of Hunter, none of the people that he pardoned had done anything criminally that we know of.
Right, so he gave him a blank check.
For these dates, for protections against a guy who is mentally unstable and just happens to be president. But it wasn't
just against Trump, though. That's the thing.
But it's a protection from Trump and the Trump administration. Like, I understand why he did it. I'm not saying my main issue with the pardons, I don't necessarily agree with the pardons. My main issue with it is that he used it to clean the record of these people who tried to overthrow the United States of America. There is nothing more un-American.
I'm not disputing the January 6th stuff. Those pardons should never, ever have happened. But what I'm talking about is the ones that Biden did, right? He shouldn't have done that either. And I don't understand that. As a prosecutor, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. I don't think anybody should be pardoned for behavior that they think someone else is coming after them for. Because for all we know, maybe Biden knew they did something worse that we don't know about.
We might, but I mean, Trump did constantly threaten Biden's family.
But it's not just Trump and Biden who have used the pardon process. Other presidents have done it too. And sometimes when you look back at those lists, you're like, what the hell was that for?
Yeah.
That's my point. I want everyone to understand it's very clear. I don't think anybody should have pardon rights, period.
Yeah.
They shouldn't.
Yeah, I would not be against pardons being removed.
Because quite honestly, as a prosecutor, it pisses me off. Somebody took the time to prosecute that case. The jury decided they were guilty, and the appellate courts upheld it. Who is the one person coming in to decide it's not right?
Yeah, but there are just levels to it, and it's so hard for me I can't get over the fact that there are still Americans. I don't care what your political affiliation is, that think that January 6th, and just the documentary we were watching yesterday. I mean, there are people who are participated in the riots, and they completely believe that they were in the right still. Like what they did was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's a mental illness. But they were encouraged by these people in positions of power, and it's giving credibility because these people are continued. They get, they're voted back in. Like Trump's voted back in. It justifies everything that they did. And then Trump pardoning them justifies it again. So it's just like, this is the game that we want to play. Like anyone who really loves America should be absolutely disgusted.
Yeah, and I think it's the difference. Obviously, there's extremists on both sides, but I think the difference is Donald Trump giving voice to a lot of those, like, extremist people. Like, could you imagine if Kamala came out and was like, they stole the election off with no evidence? People would be pissed. It would, like, the people, I think that would probably maybe have mobilized.
I think that's a good point. And they didn't because the leadership didn't come out. Joe Biden didn't come out. Kamala Harris didn't come out. Barack Obama didn't come out. Like any of those individuals could have came out and done the same thing that Trump did.
Right.
But they have enough respect for the country and for the democratic process that they allowed it to be what it was versus being a fucking child and saying, oh, well, I won, and they stole this from me, and it's going to ruin America, and it's the end of America, and you need to go do something about it. You need to fight like hell. Like the country that you love isn't going to be what it is anymore. Like, and then just wouldn't shut up about it for years and years and years and just continue to perpetuate that lie. That's an issue. It's a massive issue. You'll just lie about anything. You'll just say whatever you want. It's disgusting.
I think when we look at this issue, though, we need to take the focus back to, the victims of the crime, because it's another circumstance where the victims get forgotten to some degree.
Yeah.
And I think we need to focus on them because what happened was not right. It was not right. It shouldn't have happened. People can protest and they can do it peacefully. But when you rise to that level, you need to be held accountable. I think that's the bottom line.
Yeah, but the pardoning of those individuals is the biggest slap in the face to these victims possible.
I said that already. I agree.
And even the reelection of Trump is a massive slap in the face to these individuals. Had he not incited that crowd, had he not spread those lies about the election being stolen, those people would not have died that day, and they would not have experienced the trauma that led 4 of them to commit suicide after that day.
Have you heard or read anything from any of those victims from January 6th who heard about the pardons? Has any one of them come out and said what they think about it?
I'm sure that they have.
Because I think that would be a really interesting take on it.
I mean, there's a bunch of articles, New York Times, PBS, a betrayal, a mockery. Of course, I'm not signed into my.
But are those the victims who are saying that themselves?
Yeah, it's the police. It's the D.C. police. More than 150 officers from the Capitol Police and D.C. Police expressing their outrage over the Trump pardons. It's January 21st, 2025.
So, that really sounds like to me like, they don't have that procedure where the victims have a say before things are pardoned or appealed or any of that. And I think that is just absolutely wrong, too.
Yeah, the Capitol Police Union statement, this use of presidential power is not what Americans want to see, and it's not what law enforcement officers deserve. Anyone who assaults a law enforcement officer should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law without exception.
I agree with that.
Allowing those convicted of these crimes to be released early diminishes accountability and devalues the sacrifices made by the courageous few law enforcement officers and their families. So yeah, they had a massive issue with this.
As they should have.
Yeah. Ugh, yeah. Just bad. So many cowards elected to Congress. I'm just reading a statement from Speaker Johnson.
I think a point I was going to bring up earlier, so this is kind of off topic, but we were talking about the burden of proof for like the Senate to vote to impeach him or find him guilty. And I feel like the difference is obviously is that like with a jury, it's a jury of your peers. They're supposed to, you can like select them and go through and get rid and make sure they're almost completely unbiased. But with senators, I feel like that's so hard. Either way, like they are politicians, and they're gonna think like you already know they're biased in a way.
Yeah, to some degree, but the argument on that is that those politicians were elected by their constituents from their areas, allegedly to uphold the values of whatever those constituents' values are.
You hope.
You hope.
Yeah.
And, when I pick a jury, I hope I can get rid of all the bias, but that's if people are honest with you and tell you about the bias. What about the ones who are sitting there silently, just nodding their head like, yeah, I can do this. Yeah, I'm not biased, and they're really biased, and you don't know.
Do you do outside research outside of like that?
Jurors are given questionnaires they have to fill out, and it asks them a plethora of questions like, their marital status. Do they have kids? Have they ever been involved in a crime? Have they ever been convicted? What kind of jobs do they have? What's their education level? There's a lot of things that they're asked of them. Mm-hmm. And then we can expound on that during the voir dire process. That's the jury selection process. We can expound on it. But it's really difficult because, on a life offense case, for example, you have up to 12 peremptory challenges, meaning I can kick 12 people off for any reason. I have a gut feeling they said something, they're falling asleep, whatever it may be. After that, you have to use what's called a challenge for cause, and it has to fit in a very narrowed parameter of a Michigan court rule, which makes it harder. So if you've used all your 12 and you get to somebody who they say there can be fair, but man, the look on their face, the body language, the other things say otherwise, you're stuck with them.
So you can't search their Facebook or social media?
You could if you had time, but local county prosecutors don't generally have time for that. You see, again, this is where media blows it up. Like in a lot of big trials, they have juror analysts who come in and do that. But we don't have time to do that with all the cases we have. We don't have the resources or the money to do that.
You need a Gen Z intern.
Yeah.
Someone who knows their way around.
We need something.
To wrap up, this episode came up as a result of the conversations that we were having during the George Floyd episode relating to peaceful protests that turns into rioting and things of that nature. And obviously, this is a situation that is, I don't want to necessarily like compare the two. There's not really like a clear comparison. And I don't want to, this is way worse. This is the attempted overthrow of the United States government. I can't emphasize that enough. Like the people that try to minimize this, like what was the intent in this case? The intent was to find specific lawmakers, kill them, hold them accountable, and through like force and fear, reinstate Trump into his rightful position because the election was stolen from him. Mm-hmm. Absolute madness in the United States. They just failed. So people will like just brush it off because they failed.
Which is scary because next time they might not.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a circumstance where those protesters elevated what could have been a peaceful protest into something more violent, and they became the judge, the jury, and the executioner all at once. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, at the behest of their
Rudy
leader,
Giuliani, and
the whole gang.
Yeah,
the whole gang was there. They were all involved in one way or another.
But I do think
Rudy, Michael, Roger, Donald.
It does go back to peaceful protesting is one thing. Using your First Amendment right to speak your mind is one thing. But when you elevate it to a level of violence, it becomes a crime.
Yeah, it does. But if all of the things that he's done to this point, and I know his first impeachment was related to trying to bribe Ukraine, second impeachment related to this. They tried the impeachment call, and they couldn't get the votes. Even for that, of course, they couldn't get the votes for the Iran missile attack. Mm-hmm. If Congress has even a little bit of a spine and an understanding of history and the potential ramifications if they don't hold this individual accountable, they will impeach him after the midterms and they will find him guilty. But obviously they'll need Republicans to do that. I don't know that they have the decency. Like, so un-American. It's going to be looked back on in history, I promise, in the worst way possible. And the way that we can trace certain things in history, like we did, and I know it's different, like in the Iran episode, like these specific events led to, the Islamic Revolution in 1979, but it started in the 50s.
Right.
The same thing's going to happen here. It's going to lead the United States down a very, very dark, like seedy type path. Like, and we might be able to say, well, the January 6th riots led to the 2044, whatever it is. Cut the head off while we still can.
Yeah, but see, you can't say that word either because someone might take that as a legitimate call to action.
Hold this dude accountable.
And I only point that out because
right.
words can incite people.
You're right.
And you don't mean it that way, but
Trump's
somebody listening
incited.
might go, oh, John just said I need to do this,
Yeah,
and they
do
become
that.
violent.
Don't do that. It would be better just make sure he can never run again. Impeach him. Get him out of office. For the love of God, I know Republicans can find somebody to represent them that's better than that. It's not okay. And historically, I'm telling you, it's going to be a mess. People are going to, it's like a joke. It's an absolute joke. I still can't wrap my mind around this. We have a child. We have a child with dementia and independence
Just gonna say
in the White House.
Fuck.
Like, I can't. And
All right. And
So for everyone listening, we'd like to know your thoughts on this as well. Let us
Thank you,
know
Mary.
what you think. Let us know what else you'd like to talk about. If there are other parts of this, maybe from January 6th, that we didn't touch on. It's very hard to try to narrow down a large event like that and hit all of the parameters. But if there's something else you think we should talk about, let us know.
I can't even do your part. You did my part. I can't do your part. Seriously though, if you have questions, reach out to us. TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. Leave a comment on any of the sites where you listen to podcasts. BTV_pod.
And let us know what other topics you'd like us to talk about. Do you want us to talk about other criminal cases, other social media events, different types of things? We're open to discussing and sparring about anything you think might be worthy.
You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.